Look at the sky, and you will see no armadas of bombers blotting out the sun. Look to the horizon, and you will see no gathering armored divisions preparing to breach a sovereign border. Yet, a global conflict of unprecedented scale is currently raging all around us, silent, invisible, and devastating. We exist in an era of hybrid warfare, defined as the calculated blending of conventional military force with covert digital, economic, and informational subversion. Exploring cyber warfare reveals a clandestine dimension of conflict that fundamentally rewrites the rules of engagement, rendering traditional doctrines of defense entirely obsolete. The global power balance is no longer solely dictated by the yield of nuclear arsenals, the tonnage of naval fleets, or the standing size of an infantry force. Instead, supremacy is now contested in the dark fiber beneath our oceans and the routing protocols that bind our civilization together. A single keystroke, executed in a windowless room in a distant, unnamed capital, possesses the capability to paralyze a modern metropolis faster than any conventional bombardment. This is the domain of digital weapons, silent munitions crafted from pure logic, weaponized mathematics, and stolen access codes. To understand the gravity of this unseen battlefield, we must examine the threshold crossing that forever altered the trajectory of statecraft. The Stuxnet attack was the undeniable Rubicon of the digital age. It was a highly classified, joint intelligence operation designed to sabotage a sovereign nation's nuclear ambitions without ever declaring war or firing a single physical shot. The architects of this operation utilized a zero-day exploit, a critical software vulnerability entirely unknown to the vendor, providing the attackers a brief, undetected window of absolute, uncontested access to the target systems. Once inside the isolated subterranean facility at Natanz, the malicious code did not merely steal data, it crossed the barrier into the physical world. The malware systematically infiltrated the industrial control systems, spinning the uranium enrichment centrifuges to the exact point of catastrophic physical destruction. Simultaneously, the program played back recorded normal operating data to the engineers watching the monitoring screens, creating a flawless illusion of stability while the machinery tore itself apart. It was a masterpiece of clandestine sabotage that proved computer code could be wielded as a kinetic weapon. The geopolitical aftermath of that singular sabotage reshaped the international landscape permanently. Nation-states across the globe instantly realized that absolute devastation could now be achieved with absolute deniability. This deniability is the foundational cornerstone of the unseen battlefield. When a power grid inexplicably fails or a financial sector suddenly collapses, the immediate, agonizing question for a targeted government is not how to retaliate, but whom to definitively blame. The fog of cyber war is intentionally dense, cultivated by a shadow network, a decentralized, covert web of state-sponsored proxy groups operating with plausible deniability. By utilizing independent hacker syndicates, criminal organizations, and layers of spoofed digital routing, aggressor nations can launch crippling offensives while officially maintaining diplomatic innocence. Furthermore, the most sophisticated operators utilize false flag techniques, intentionally leaving behind digital forensic evidence that points toward a rival nation, actively manipulating the intelligence community's attempt to attribute the attack. This creates a terrifying paradigm where states can bleed their adversaries dry through 1,000 invisible cuts, constantly testing the boundaries of conflict without ever triggering a conventional military response. Consider the catastrophic release of NotPetya, a chilling demonstration of how quickly these covert operations can spiral out of control. Initially disguised as a localized ransomware infection, the payload was a highly sophisticated state-sponsored digital strike targeting the financial and administrative infrastructure of a specific geopolitical rival. However, the weaponized code was designed to propagate with unprecedented aggression, and it rapidly mutated into an unstoppable global contagion. The malicious software ignored sovereign borders, paralyzing international shipping conglomerates, crippling multinational corporations, and erasing billions of dollars in global economic value within a matter of hours. It was a stark, undeniable demonstration of the collateral damage inherent in this new form of statecraft. A targeted strike intended to destabilize a single neighboring nation inadvertently triggered a catastrophic, uncontrollable shockwave across the deeply interconnected global economy. It proved that digital weapons cannot be easily contained once unleashed into the wild, behaving more like a biological contagion than a precision munition. The true existential terror of this evolving paradigm lies not in the targeting of military installations, but in the vulnerability of the civilian sphere. The military networks of the world are hardened, isolated, and heavily defended by layers of sophisticated cryptography. Therefore, the crosshairs of state-sponsored hackers have inevitably shifted to critical infrastructure, the fragile, deeply interconnected systems that sustain the very fabric of modern society. Water treatment plants, national energy grids, healthcare networks, and global transportation hubs represent the new, highly contested front line. These vital systems are largely operated by private, commercial entities, often lacking the massive budgets and sophisticated defensive capabilities of a national intelligence apparatus. They are the soft, exposed underbelly of a nation's sovereignty, built for efficiency and connectivity rather than resilience against military-grade digital incursions. To hold these vital, life-sustaining systems hostage is to possess a stranglehold over a geopolitical rival. A stranglehold is a strategic grip so absolute it paralyzes the adversary's ability to function or respond, achieving submission without the necessity of deploying a single soldier. If an unseen adversary can shut down the electrical grid of the eastern seaboard in the dead of winter, freeze the logistics networks that deliver food to major cities, or corrupt the immutable data within the central banking system, they can dictate terms to a superpower. The threat of physical violence is entirely replaced by the threat of systemic societal collapse. In response to this looming, invisible threat, a silent, desperate arms race has consumed the international intelligence community. Nations are actively stockpiling software vulnerabilities, hoarding these digital exploits, rather than reporting them to technology companies to be patched. They are intentionally preserving the capability to strike back at a moment's notice, prioritizing their offensive arsenals over the collective security of the global digital ecosystem. Intelligence agencies now operate under a classified doctrine of persistent engagement, treating the digital domain as an active, continuous war zone. State-sponsored operators are constantly probing adversary networks, mapping critical vulnerabilities, and quietly planting dormant logic bombs within foreign infrastructure. These hidden payloads sit in silence, deeply embedded in the code that runs power plants and dams, simply waiting for the political authorization from a head of state to detonate. This relentless, unseen maneuvering creates a precarious architecture of mutually assured digital destruction. The global power balance is maintained not by the promise of lasting peace, but by the terrifying equilibrium of hidden, systemic vulnerabilities. Every major power knows that if they launch a crippling digital offensive, their own critical infrastructure is already compromised, rigged with the unseen tripwires of their enemies. Unlike the nuclear arms race of the 20th century, which required vast, easily monitored industrial complexes and the refinement of rare, highly regulated isotopes, the barrier to entry for digital warfare is alarmingly low. We are witnessing the rapid democratization of devastation. A small, rogue state, or even a well-funded syndicate of ideological extremists, requires only a bank of commercial servers and a team of brilliant, dedicated engineers to punch far above their traditional geopolitical weight. This asymmetry actively subverts the established hierarchy of nations. A superpower with $1 trillion conventional military budget can find its economy crippled and its society paralyzed by an adversary operating from a basement halfway across the world. The traditional metrics of national power, the counting of tanks and fighter jets, offer no protection against an enemy that exploits the very connectivity that makes modern life possible. Furthermore, beyond the physical sabotage of industrial machinery and financial networks, there is an equally insidious, ongoing campaign waged directly against the human mind. The manipulation of information, the targeted disruption of democratic electoral processes, and the calculated erosion of public trust are potent, highly refined weapons in the modern digital arsenal. State actors deploy vast armies of automated accounts and sophisticated algorithms to flood the digital landscape with conflicting, highly emotive narratives. By exploiting the very platforms that govern our daily communication, unseen adversaries can artificially amplify societal fractures, weaponizing a nation's own internal divisions against itself. They map the psychological vulnerabilities of a target demographic with the same clinical precision used to map a server network. It is a bloodless psychological conquest, achieving strategic dominance not by destroying cities, but by systematically dismantling the adversary's collective will to resist. The ultimate objective is to obscure the truth so thoroughly that a population can no longer agree on fundamental reality, rendering the state incapable of unified action. The comforting concept of a sovereign, defensible border has completely evaporated in the digital age. The front line of this new conflict is everywhere at once, running invisibly through our financial institutions, our local hospitals, and the ubiquitous devices resting in our pockets. We exist in a state of perpetual, undeclared conflict, a shadow war that never ceases and recognizes no civilian casualties. The peace we perceive in our daily lives is merely an illusion, a fragile surface tension masking the turbulent, unseen depths where the true battles for global supremacy are being fought every single second. Until we collectively acknowledge the terrifying reality of this silent war, we remain entirely defenseless against the architects of our own vulnerability. The unseen battlefield is not a distant theoretical threat looming on the horizon. It is the compromised, fragile foundation upon which our entire modern world precariously rests.